sleeping on the job.
Pineapple. Ooh, oh no.
Part 2 came out. I recorded a video praising the heck out of part 1, but waited until the whole series was released before posting it. I was avoiding spoilers in my first review because I generally liked the first part enough to want you guys to experience it for yourself. But they dropped the ball so hard on this, I don't give a fuck anymore. I do not like You, the Netflix series. I think it's a boring show. Sure, the first season was okay, but the second and third season turned into a whiny soap opera with a side of murder. It wasn't interesting to me. So what made me like season 4 so much was because Joe, the main stalker protagonist, tries to make a new life in Britain after faking his death. He put his past behind him and turned a new leaf, quitting, stalking, and murdering. Ooh, intrigue. Ooh, character growth. But then, a serial killer appears, killing the rich friends he's made in his new life. So now Joe has to use his stalker skills that he previously forsook, in order to keep these pretentious yet innocent-ish assholes alive. Suspense. Who's the killer? One of his new friends? A stranger? And then the killer finds his true identity and threatens to reveal his darkest secrets. While Joe is running around trying to keep the killer off his back and to protect the innocent people around him, he gets into an intense relationship with one of his wards, Kate, the new love interest of this season. There's like a new love interest every season. What's interesting is that Joe isn't attracted enough to Kate that he feels the urge to stalk her. In fact, she's downright hostile to Joe. Cue enemies to lovers trope. Eventually they get flirty. I was all about it. And they finally kissed. I was all about it. And then they forked and I was like, yes. Also, the rivalry between Joe and the serial killer was pretty flirty and I was like, huh. The suspense was intense. I was at the edge of my seat. You can feel the pressure of how important it is that Joe finds the killer. Then it left on a cliffhanger. The killer's identity was finally revealed. It was Reese, his new friend amongst the rich elite he was trying to protect. And I called that shit, by the way. But he escaped before Joe could catch him. How will Joe face this new development? Wait till March 9th for part 2! Now, before I get into the big plot twist they did in part 2, I want to delve deeper into Reese. Giggity. The Eat the Rich killer, as the show dubbed him, Reese was an interesting character. From a sad background, he built himself up to be a likable and charming man that everyone adored, especially the lower to middle class. He was the man of the people, using his wealth and influence to make London a better place. But behind the kind smile and altruistic personality laid a predator, watching his prey with keen eyes. You see, Reese noticed how selfish and pretentious the Britain elite were, how they squandered their wealth on meaningless trinkets instead of investing in doing genuine good in the world. So he started taking them out, meticulously, one by one. He started with his rich friend group because they knew his dark secrets, like drugs and stuff, not murdering, and could ruin his image. And you can't have a ruined image when you run for mayoral election, right? Once he's mayor, he'll have true influence and make real change. And if he crosses paths with an elite who seems unworthy of such power, well, he knows how to get rid of them. Then he meets Joe. They have similar backgrounds. Joe even likes the novel he wrote and the travel blogs he posted. At first, Reese saw Joe as a scapegoat and tried to frame one of his murders on the American professor. And when he saw Joe get rid of the dead body, well, things just got more interesting for him. The back and forth between Reese and Joe were teasing, borderline flirting, but never without the hint of threat that Reese could destroy Joe's world on a whim. But maybe they could be friends. They were the same after all. Even if Joe denies it, they would work so well together. He just has to see it. And then part 2 dropped. So Joe is back still fighting the serial killer. Kate's narcissistic CEO father comes into play, making things even more intense. Long story short, Joe finds out where the serial killer is and kills him, and the big twist is the serial killer isn't real. Joe was hallucinating him this whole time. Joe was actually the serial killer. Any interaction with the serial killer was just Joe talking to himself. This was lame as fuck. Even my sister, who was way more invested in the show as a whole than I was, said it was lame as fuck and even grew bored of the show as I did. Ooh, it was all in his head. Apparently he had a psychotic break and developed a split personality. His dark side, emerged as a serial killer, and he denied he had a dark side and refused to embrace it, blah blah blah. He's still the same shit stalker dude who kidnaps and kills people. So, a serial killer who wanted to hold the spoiled elitists accountable was an interesting social commentary about, nah, it's just Joe being crazy. Interesting and complex characters? Pfft, who wants that? Ha, you thought he was trying to change? You pleb. And didn't you notice that Reese only talked to Joe and no one else? We set this up from the start. You motherfuckers. You got me. You fucking got me. You had convinced me you were going to change things up in a more interesting way in part 1. I genuinely thought you guys had a masterpiece in the making. I even asked myself if they got new writers because it was so good there was no way it was the same people who made the previous shit seasons. God, you can almost feel the self-gratification they got for ruining this story. So everything fell apart from there. Joe murders innocent people without remorse again. Kate, who was the most down-to-earth, likable character who genuinely tried to do good, turned into her diabolical CEO father by taking over the soulless company she had previously forsook and used her influence to cover up anything bad Joe does. You know, like her evil father did. The evil father she so strongly refused to turn into. What was also annoying was that Joe tried to commit self-deletion because, let's be honest, you can't end the story of a villain with him living for long without some kind of consequence for his evil deeds, but he survives with Kate promising to take care of him and nothing bad happens to him ever. I want to emphasize how much of a 180 all of this was. It felt like one very good, masterful writer wrote the first part of the season, then the shitty writers of the previous season came back to mess it all up. It left me with a few questions. Who wrote this? And did you think this was good? You genuinely thought this was good writing. One theory I had was that they were trying to, quote-unquote, subvert expectations with the twist. And look how well that stuff always goes. Cough, the Last Jedi cough. Sometimes twists aren't needed. Giving viewers what they expected and exceeding those expectations is rewarding and satisfying. None of what we got was rewarding or satisfying in the least. You sacrificed great writing for a below-average twist with below-average results. The best this show will get is be an example on what bad writing and bad twists look like. You should be ashamed. You took a gem and then turned it into a failure that will disappear into obscurity. No one will remember this show in 10 years. You idiots. I'm gonna go read fan fiction about Joe and Reese. This is ridiculous. Fanfic authors write better shit than this. I'm never watching this TV series ever again. I swear to God, this is my fucking villain's origin story. The only good takeaway from this is that I could tell Ed Spelliers, the actor who played Reese, really had a blast playing the character. At least someone had a good time.